The red emergency beacon pulses across the silent void of deep space, its desperate message repeating in 37 galactic languages. The Galactic Council chambers erupt in chaos as reports flood in. 3 more colony worlds gone dark, consumed by the advancing void swarm. Elder Zexlin slams his crystalline appendage against the central table, silencing the room. We have lost 15 worlds already. Our combined fleets have failed. We must request external assistance. The emergency distress signal broadcasts to all corners of known space as Council species calculate their survival odds and determine intervention would be catastrophic. Days pass in tense silence until a single, unexpected response arrives from a recently catalogued world, Earth. The transmission shows a human woman with determined eyes and a slight smile. Captain Nadia Chen of the Earth Alliance stands tall on her bridge, surrounded by her crew. This is humanity responding to your distress call. We're coming to help. Council xenopsychologists frantically review their classification of humans as dangerously furious evolutionary anomalies, the only known species where emotion enhances rather than impairs decision-making. As human warships prepare for departure, probability computers calculate their chance of success at 0.037%. Captain Chen studies the data on the void swarm, then simply says, "Those odds are good enough for us." Captain Chen's transmission ends and the council chamber remains silent for precisely 17 seconds before erupting into a cacophony of translated voices. The crystalline members of the Tholian delegation vibrate at frequencies that threaten to shatter nearby data terminals. The methane-breathing Volarians release stress pheromones that trigger emergency ventilation protocols. "They cannot be serious," Elder Kirvok says, his tendrils twisting anxiously. The humans have only achieved faster-than-light travel within the last century. Their technology is rudimentary compared to the swarm's adaptive capabilities. Senior analyst Mira Tillin projects the human fleet's specifications onto the central display. 12 capital ships, 37 support vessels, and approximately 100 fighter-class interceptors. The council members study the human technology with expressions ranging from confusion to dismissal. Their ship designs prioritize redundancy over efficiency. Tillin notes, highlighting sections of the human vessels. Multiple backup systems, manual overrides for automated processes, and significantly more crew members than our equivalents would require. Inefficient, the Navarian representative clicks through his translator. Yet perhaps revealing. They expect systems to fail and prepare accordingly. In Earth's orbital shipyard, the human vessels prepare for departure. Captain Chen walks the corridor of her flagship, the Defiant, nodding to crew members as she passes. Unlike the logical, serene command centers of council vessels, the human bridge buzzes with activity. Officers calling to each other, screens displaying multiple information feeds simultaneously, and the underlying hum of conversation. Commander Sarah Reyes falls into step beside Chen. Final diagnostics complete, Captain. Engineering reports all systems nominal. And the crew? Reyes hesitates. They've seen the footage from the fallen council worlds. They know what we're up against. Ken stops at a viewport, watching as Earth grows smaller behind them. And still they volunteered. Every single one, Reyes confirms. Plus, we had to turn away twice as many. Half the fleet wanted this assignment. In the council archives, synopsychologist Vertal reviews human historical records with growing fascination. They have no evolutionary reason for this behavior, she dictates into her recorder. Species typically evolve to maximize survival and reproduction. Yet humans consistently demonstrate willingness to risk themselves for unrelated individuals, abstract principles, and even theoretical future generations. Her assistant, Colin, studies battlefield footage from Earth's historical wars. Perhaps their emotional responses served as group cohesion mechanisms initially, then evolved beyond their original purpose. Their neural pathways suggest something unique, Vertal says, displaying human brain scans. When faced with threats, Their emotional centers don't suppress rational thought as with most species. They enhance it. Their anger doesn't cloud judgment. It focuses it. As the human fleet enters hyperspace, Captain Chen reviews the Void Swarm tactical data one final time. The entities appear to operate as a unified intelligence, adapting to Council defense strategies with frightening speed. Conventional warfare had proven ineffective. The swarm simply absorbed losses and adapted. They learned from patterns, Chen murmurs, noticing something the Council analysts had missed, but they've never encountered human unpredictability. The Defiance hyperspace engines hum as Lieutenant Commander Miguel Ortiz approaches. Captain, Council High Command is questioning our tactical approach. They're suggesting we adopt their standard containment protocols. Chen's lips curve into a slight smile. Thank them for their concern, then inform them that we'll be implementing Earth Tactical Directive 7. The Unexpected Response Protocol? Ortiz raises an eyebrow. They won't understand that one, Captain. No, Chen agrees, watching the swirling cosmos through the viewport. That's precisely the point. The Void Swarm has adapted to logical opponents. Let's show them what happens when they face humanity's controlled chaos instead. The Council observation dome sparkles with crystalline light as Captain Chen and her officers step through the airlock. Senior Counselor Vaxthal, a being evolved for pure logic, tilts his faceted head. We must understand why you would risk extinction for strangers. Chen's explanation introduces alien concepts to the Council: moral obligation, standing up for the little guy, and most perplexingly, righteous indignation. Commander Jackson demonstrates with a simple story about playground bullies and why humans intervene. The Council scientists project a holographic timeline of human history, highlighting moments where emotion drove humans to achieve the seemingly impossible. While our species evolved to suppress emotional responses as survival liabilities, explains the Moravian xenobiologist, humans uniquely harnessed these primitive drives as catalysts for action. The meeting halts as emergency alerts flash across the chamber walls. Live footage shows Void Swarm entities swarming through the Palexis system. 2 billion sentient beings cry out, then fall silent. The chamber temperature drops 10 degrees as Council members process the tragedy with logical detachment. Then Captain Chen stands, her voice quiet but intense, her hand flat against the table. This ends now, whatever it takes. The Council members draw back, unsettled by the emotional display yet seeing, perhaps for the first time, a glimmer of possibility where their probability models had shown none. The silence that follows Chen's declaration stretches uncomfortably. Elder Trazine, his carapace gleaming under the observation dome's lights, finally speaks. Your species confounds our understanding. You permit yourselves to feel these disruptions when they clearly impair optimal functioning. Commander Jackson exchanges a glance with Chen before responding. With respect, Elder, they don't impair us. They drive us. The Council xenobiologist, a slender Moravian named Nilsor, approaches with measured steps. Her specialized respiratory apparatus hisses softly with each breath. Perhaps a demonstration would illuminate this phenomenon, she suggests, gesturing toward the neural mapping equipment arranged along the chamber's perimeter. Chen nods her consent, and the Moravian attaches monitoring devices to her temple and wrist. As the equipment calibrates, Dr. Nilsor explains to the assembled Council representatives, observe the baseline activity. Now, Captain, please recall your feelings upon seeing the Palexis footage. The monitoring equipment flares to life. Holographic representations of Chen's neural pathways illuminate, showing cascading activation patterns across both emotional and logical centers of her brain. Fascinating, whispers Dr. Nilsor. In Council species, emotional activation suppresses cognitive function. In humans, they appear synergistic. Lieutenant Kara Wong steps forward, her voice steady. It's why we fight better when we have something to fight for. Or someone. Senior Counselor Vaxthal's crystalline form refracts light as he processes this information. This defies evolutionary logic. Emotions developed as primitive survival mechanisms. They should have been selected against as intelligence increased. Not exactly, Chen replies, removing the neural monitors. Earth's history was particularly violent. Those who fought hardest for their families, their tribes, their beliefs, they survived. Emotional investment became an advantage, not a liability. The council chamber's lighting dims as Dr. Nilser projects historical Earth imagery. Ancient warriors defending their homes, revolutionaries facing impossible odds, disaster responders risking themselves for strangers. Your historical records indicate repeated instances of individuals sacrificing personal survival for group benefit, notes Counselor Zexlin. This behavior appears irrational. Commander Jackson smiles slightly. We have a saying on Earth: the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. A quote from your philosophical texts, inquires Vaxthal. From a movie, actually, Jackson admits. Sometimes our entertainment teaches us more than our textbooks. The conversation halts abruptly as the chamber's emergency systems activate. Holographic displays materialize, showing real-time footage from the Arcturian defensive line. Void swarm entities pour through the barrier like liquid darkness, consuming everything in their path. Evacuation protocols initiated, announces the automated system. Civilian losses currently at 65% and rising. The council representatives observe the tragedy with disciplined calm, their species having evolved to process information without emotional interference. Data scrolls across their personal interfaces, calculating resource impacts and strategic implications. But the humans react differently. Chen's officers straighten, jaws tightening, and hands clenching. The neural monitors, still active nearby, record a surge of activity in their emotional centers, yet simultaneously show increased function in planning and tactical regions. We need to be there, Chen says, her voice quiet but carrying an undercurrent that makes several council members step back involuntarily. Now, your 12 vessels cannot possibly alter the outcome, Elder Trazim states. The Statistics don't decide battles, Chen interrupts. People do. As the human delegation turns to leave, Dr. Nilser approaches Chen one last time. This emotional response you exhibit, she says hesitantly. Our lexicon has no precise term for it. Chen pauses at the airlock. The closest word would probably be fury, but it's not blind rage. It's focused, purposeful. And this fury, you believe it will help against the swarm. Chen's smile contains something ancient and dangerous. The swarm has never faced humans before. They've never encountered an enemy who fights harder when things look hopeless. She glances at the continuing footage of destruction. They're about to learn. The observation deck falls silent as the human fleet drops out of hyperspace, their ships bulky and asymmetrical compared to the elegant council vessels. Those designs appear inefficient, notes Admiral Zilkson. Lieutenant Commander Reyes grins. We call it redundancy. Our ships keep fighting even when half destroyed. The Council's tactical display illuminates as humans introduce battle concepts that baffle alien strategists. Flanking maneuvers with unacceptable risk ratios, defensive formations protecting weaker allies at personal cost, and coordinated attack patterns based on intuition rather than pure calculation. When void swarm entities ambush a human reconnaissance team, the Council expects standard procedure, strategic withdrawal, and recalculation. Instead, they witness what humans term protective rage as nearby human ships surge forward, pilots manually overriding safety protocols and executing maneuvers that their own ship's AI would never permit. The rescue succeeds against impossible odds. During the first major engagement, human communications flood with emotional expressions the translation software struggles to contextualize. Rallying cries, invocations of earthbound deities, and references to historical last stands. The battle ends with human casualties exceeding acceptable parameters by Council standards, yet with the first significant victory against the swarm. The Council's Xenoscience team works through the night, documenting the paradoxical human responses. How grief transforms into resolve, how fear sharpens focus rather than triggering retreat, and how humans fight more effectively, not less, when emotionally invested. They call it having skin in the game. The lead scientist notes in her report, a concept we have no translation for. The battle data scrolls across Admiral Zildzen's personal interface, his compound eyes rapidly processing the information. The statistics make no sense. His exoskeleton clicks softly as he shifts position, confronting Commander Jackson. Your pilots deliberately place themselves between the swarm and the mining colony, he states, mandibles working. Calculations indicated a 94% casualty probability. Jackson nods, watching the tactical replay. Those miners had families down there. Precisely. Your pilots have families as well. The optimal strategy would have been to sacrifice the colony and preserve your forces. That's not how we operate, Admiral. On the bridge of the Defiant, Captain Chen reviews the after-action reports. Lieutenant Wang approaches with a data tablet. 17 casualties, Captain. 5 critical. Chen's eyes remain fixed on the holographic display showing the swarm's retreat. And the colony? Evacuated successfully. All 4,732 civilians accounted for. Then it was worth it. Chen finally looks up. Have Commander Ortiz prepare the squadron for our next engagement. I want to hit them while they're regrouping. In the Council's medical observation facility, Xenobiologist Nilser studies brain scans from wounded human pilots. Her assistant, a young Phelan named Jivtur, manipulates the holographic display. Their neurotransmitter levels should indicate severe stress response. Jivter notes confusion evident in his vibrating vocal sacs. Yet their cognitive functions remain optimal. Some even show enhanced performance metrics. Nilser gestures to a particular neural pathway. This region activates when they witness allies in danger. It connects directly to their decision-making centers, creating what they call protective instinct. A survival disadvantage, surely. One would think so, Nilsor admits. Yet somehow it works for them. In the hangar bay, human technicians work feverishly on damaged fighters. Unlike the automated repair systems of Council vessels, the humans perform tasks manually, calling instructions to each other, occasionally arguing over approaches. Council observer Nistel watches with fascination. Your repair methodology appears chaotic and inefficient, she notes to Chief Engineer Marcus Tanaka. Tanaka wipes grease from his hands. Maybe. But when systems fail, we improvise. Each of my people can repair any system on these birds, even without proper parts. You anticipate failure? Tanaka laughs. We count on it. These fighters are designed to keep flying, even when half their systems are shot to hell. As the next engagement approaches, Captain Chen addresses her squadron leaders in the briefing room. Unlike the serene, logical briefings of Council commanders, the atmosphere crackles with tension and determination. The swarm adapts quickly, Chen says, pointing to tactical projections. They've already developed countermeasures to our flanking maneuvers. So we switch it up, Commander Ortiz suggests. Hit them with something completely different. Exactly. Chen activates a new simulation. They expect logical responses, incremental adaptations to their countermeasures. Instead, we'll do something that makes no sense. The Hornet's Nest tactic, Lieutenant Shaw asks, leaning forward. Chen nods. With modifications, we'll make them think they cornered us, then spring the trap when they commit their forces. On the Council command ship, Admiral Zildzen receives the human battle plan with visible alarm. This strategy deliberately invites attack. He protests via comlink. Your casualties will be extreme. Chen's voice comes through clearly. Sometimes you have to risk everything to win, Admiral. This defies all established tactical doctrine. That's the point. Chen's smile is audible in her voice. The swarm has adapted to your doctrine. They haven't adapted to ours. As the human fleet moves into position, The Council observers record every communication, every maneuver. The data they're collecting contradicts everything they believed about combat psychology. These humans don't just accept the possibility of death, they seem to draw strength from it, forming what the xenopsychologists are tentatively calling transcendent purpose. When the Void Swarm approaches, Lieutenant Wong's voice carries across the command channel. For Earth, for each other, for everyone counting on us. Let's show these things what humans can do. The Council observers watch in stunned silence as the human fleet engages, their ships moving in patterns that no tactical AI would ever recommend. Yet somehow, impossibly, it works. The holographic battle map rotates slowly as Captain Chen outlines her strategy. The Council chamber temperature drops several degrees as comprehension dawns. This cannot be serious, Elder Trazine finally says. Your plan deliberately draws the swarm to attack you? Chen nods, tracing the projected movement patterns. We call it baiting the trap. The Council's military AI calculates a 97.8% probability of catastrophic failure. A murmur ripples through the chamber as humans explain concepts that translate poorly, calculated gambles, holding ground against overwhelming odds, and using the enemy's strength against them. The Phelan Admiral, whose species evolved from ambushed predators, comes closest to understanding. You wish to be prey. Commander Ortiz shakes his head. We wish to appear as prey. The Council reluctantly authorizes the operation with minimal support. As the plan unfolds, observation posts record human communications that xenopsychologists find deeply unsettling. Ritual chants from Earth cultures, invocations of fallen comrades, and what humans call getting psyched up. The Void Swarm takes the bait, committing its forces exactly as Chen predicted. Council observers watch in stunned silence as human vessels execute coordinated maneuvers that exploit weaknesses in swarm tactics that even the Council's advanced pattern recognition had missed. As human casualties mount beyond what Council species consider acceptable parameters, Admiral Zilksen notices something extraordinary. They're fighting harder as they lose more ships. A Hivron philosopher, watching the battle unfold, makes an observation that will transform galactic military doctrine. They are the only known species that grows more dangerous when wounded, not less. They do not retreat from pain, they advance through it. Commander Ortiz manipulates the holographic projections, his fingers tracing the predicted swarm response patterns. The key is to make them think they've won before they realize it's a trap. Elder Trazim's sensory stalks quiver with barely contained alarm. You propose sacrificing your forward fleet elements as bait. Not sacrificing, Lieutenant Wong corrects. They'll take damage, certainly, but that's accounted for in our ship designs. When the swarm commits to attacking what they perceive as vulnerable vessels, our main force will execute a pincer movement from these coordinates. The Council's tactical AI processes the simulation, its probability matrix flashing red warnings across all displays. Admiral Zilksen studies the numbers grimly. Your own calculations indicate unacceptable loss rates. By your standards, Captain Chen acknowledges. But we define acceptable differently when the alternative is extinction. In the briefing room aboard the Defiant, Chen addresses the pilots who will form the bait element. Unlike Council commanders who would select expendable units via algorithmic optimization, Chen has requested volunteers only. I won't lie to you, she says, looking each pilot in the eye. This mission carries extreme risk. Your job is to appear vulnerable enough to draw the swarm in, but survive long enough for the trap to close. Flight Lieutenant Devi Sharma raises her hand. Rules of engagement, Captain. Standard protocols until the swarm commits fully. After that, Chen's expression hardens. Whatever it takes to keep your ships fighting until the main force arrives. As the human fleet moves into position, Council observation posts record communications they find increasingly difficult to translate. Ritual phrases from ancient Earth cultures, personal mantras repeated like prayers, and what their psychologists identify as gallows humor. jokes made in the face of possible death. The translation matrix cannot contextualize these communications, reports Dr. Nilsor, monitoring the neural patterns of human pilots. They appear to be intentionally elevating their emotional states. Counterproductive. Elder Trazine notes, elevated emotions impair cognitive function. Not for them, Dr. Nilsor whispers, watching the neural activity with fascination. For humans, this state creates what they call hyperfocus, a combat readiness our species achieve only through chemical enhancement. When the Void Swarm detects the seemingly vulnerable human ships, it reacts precisely as Chen predicted. The Hive intelligence, having adapted to Council tactics based on logical conservation of forces, perceives an opportunity to eliminate a threat. It commits nearly 70% of its local mass to the attack. From the Council Command Center, Admiral Zilgsen watches with rigid posture as the human bait ships take devastating damage. By any logical standard, the pilots should be retreating or surrendering their vessels. Instead, their communication frequency fills with defiant shouts and expressions of what humans call determination. Fall back to position Delta. Lieutenant Sharma calls as her ship's port thrusters fail. Keep them following us. Negative, responds another pilot, his ship trailing plasma. I can still draw more of them toward the choke point. The Council tactical analysts watch in silence as damaged human vessels continue fighting long past the point their simulations predicted functional failure. Then, at precisely the moment Chen calculated, the trap closes. The main human fleet emerges from concealed positions, catching the committed swarm in a devastating crossfire. Impossible, whispers a Moravian tactician, watching the swarm entities attempt to scatter, suddenly vulnerable in their concentrated form. They've disrupted the swarm's neural network. It's confused. A Hive-run philosopher, observing silently until now, finally speaks. In our evolutionary history, wounded creatures retreat to minimize further damage. It is logical. It is survival. He gestures to the human vessels, still fighting despite catastrophic damage. These humans, they advance through pain. They do not retreat when wounded. They attack more fiercely. Admiral Zilgsen's compound eyes reflect the tactical display as the battle turns decisively. A strategy no logical species would conceive, he acknowledges, and precisely why it worked. The memorial wall aboard the human flagship grows daily, each name etched with laser precision beside a small personal token. A playing card, a dried flower, a handwritten note. Council observer Nicetell watches human crew members touch the wall as they pass, some whispering, others standing silently. Your losses have reached 37%, she notes. Our models predict morale collapse at 25. Commander Jackson removes his cap, running fingers through sweat-dampened hair. Watch our next engagement. We're just getting started. The neural monitors confirm what Council psychologists initially labeled impossible. Human combat effectiveness increases proportionally with losses. Before they can complete their analysis, alarms blare. A Void Swarm tendril has broken through defenses, heading directly toward a refugee fleet carrying survivors from fallen worlds. The Council Command Center calculates. The refugees cannot escape in time, and any intervention force would be destroyed. As they prepare to write off the loss, 5 human vessels break formation without authorization, accelerating toward the swarm in what their communications describe as a holding action. Council tactical officers watch in disbelief as the human ships position themselves between predator and prey, broadcasting messages to the refugees. We'll buy you time. Get those children out. The human ships are torn apart one by one, each fighting until its final moment, allowing 83% of the refugee vessels to escape. In the aftermath, Captain Chen stands before the memorial wall, adding 5 ship patches. Council representatives struggle to understand what they've witnessed. They didn't know those refugees, one says. Why sacrifice for strangers? Chen's eyes remain on the wall as she answers. Because they needed help. Later, Chen attempts to explain the concept that humans consider some things worth dying for. The translation matrix fails repeatedly, requiring 6 hours of philosophical discussion before council members grasp even its basic meaning. This is why you will never understand us, Chen finally says, her hand passing over the memorial names. Every name here makes us stronger, not weaker. Lieutenant Wang enters the medical bay, navigating between beds filled with injured crew members. The Council Xenomedical team observes with professional detachment as she stops at each patient, speaking softly, clasping hands, leaving small tokens. This ritual serves what purpose? Asks Dr. Zeptor, monitoring neural responses. It's not a ritual, Wang replies. It's being human. The doctor tilts his head. Your personal presence cannot accelerate cellular regeneration. The efficiency loss from diverting your duty time is immeasurable, Wang interrupts, but not in the way you think. At the tactical center, Captain Chen reviews sensor data with Admiral Zilxin. The holographic display shows a formation of refugee ships, civilian vessels overcrowded with survivors from 3 devastated systems. Thermal signatures indicate life support strain, the Admiral notes. Approximately 42,000 individuals. Ken examines their trajectory. They'll never outrun that swarm tendril. Indeed, our simulations give them a 0.04% survival probability. A regrettable loss, but unacceptable, Chen says, her voice unnervingly calm. Admiral Zilxin's mandibles click in surprise. Captain, diverting forces would endanger our strategic position. The logical course. We're not leaving those people to die. Chen activates the comm. Strike Team Delta, prepare for immediate deployment. On the bridge of the interceptor Valiant, Commander Reyes briefs her volunteer team. Unlike the logical, emotionless briefings of council commanders, the atmosphere is charged with purpose. We're the only thing standing between those refugees and extinction, Reyes explains, showing the swarm's approach vector. Our job is simple, buy them time to escape. Odds of survival? Asks pilot Chen Liu. Don't ask questions you don't want answers to. Reyes responds with a grim smile. What matters is that every minute we hold that line, more civilians get away. In the Council Observation Center, synopsicologists record every communication as the 5 human vessels accelerate toward the swarm tendril. Their instruments detect what would be considered emotional instability in Council species, yet the humans' tactical coordination remains flawless. They know they cannot survive this engagement, notes Elder Trazine. Yet they proceed without hesitation. Dr. Nilser studies the neural data streaming from the human ships. This emotional state, we previously classified it as self-destructive, but that's incorrect. They're experiencing something our lexicon cannot define. The observation screens show the human vessels deploying in a defensive screen between the approaching swarm and the fleeing refugees. Their communication frequency carries messages that the Council species find incomprehensible. Reactor to 120%. We don't need it to last forever. Remember the Alamo. For Earth and everyone on those ships. The battle unfolds with brutal efficiency. The Valiant, its hull breached in 17 places, continues fighting well beyond structural integrity predictions. The other vessels form an ever-tightening defensive perimeter as their numbers dwindle. From the refugee ships, messages flood the communication channels. Thanks, prayers, promises to remember. The Council observers note with fascination how these communications seem to strengthen the remaining human defenders. The last vessel, Commander Reyes Valiant, transmits a final message as it positions itself directly in the swarm's path, buying crucial minutes for the final refugee ships to reach hyperspace threshold. Tell them we did our job. Afterward, in the Council chambers, the silence is profound. Their species evolved for logical self-preservation, cannot process what they've witnessed. They had no biological connection to those refugees, a Moravian representative finally says. No evolutionary imperative to sacrifice genetic continuity. Captain Chen, standing before the newly updated memorial wall, finally offers the explanation that changes everything. We protect others not because it makes evolutionary sense, but because it makes us human. The Garaxian sunset casts purple shadows across the evacuation zones as the last civilian transports lift off. The Void Swarm descends like a storm cloud on the horizon, countless entities blotting out the stars. Admiral Zilgsen reviews the casualty reports. Human losses now exceed 47%. Captain Chen, the defense of this position is no longer tenable. Logical protocol demands immediate withdrawal. The communication screen shows Chen on her damaged bridge, emergency lighting casting harsh shadows across her face. Around her, crew members work frantically, ignoring injuries and exhaustion. Request denied, Admiral. We're staying. Council observers patch into the human fleet's internal communications as Chen addresses her commanders. Her speech triggers something the xenopsychologists have never seen: neural patterns indicating simultaneous desperation and exhilaration, what one researcher tentatively labels transcendent determination. Chen's voice carries across the fleet. Throughout our history, humanity has faced moments like this. Thermopylae, Dunkirk, the Alamo. With each reference, she transmits historical images that council analysts frantically study. Small forces standing against overwhelming odds, choosing defiance over surrender. This is who we are. Chen concludes, her voice steady. This is what we do. As the Void Swarm attacks, the remaining human ships execute maneuvers that contradict every tactical doctrine. They fight in formations that maximize enemy casualties at the expense of their own survival. They target swarm neural clusters with surgical precision despite taking devastating damage. A council observer notes with astonishment. They've been studying the swarm, learning its patterns, even while losing ships. For the first time, the Void Swarm's advance falters, then stops. Council strategists, watching the impossible unfold, begin downloading Earth's military history, particularly focusing on what humans call last stands, moments where, against all calculation, cornered humans chose what their literature romantically terms glorious defiance. The Garaxian religious leader, watching alongside them, whispers, "We have always feared the dark between stars. Perhaps we needed those who do not." The Defiance bridge bears little resemblance to its original configuration. Exposed conduits hang from the ceiling, emergency force fields contain hull breaches, and crew members operate from makeshift stations. Lieutenant Wang approaches Chen with the latest damage report, her uniform scorched and torn. Engineering reports reactor stability at 62%, she says quietly. Weapons systems operating at half capacity. Chen nods, studying the tactical display where the swarm masses for another assault. And our people. Tired. Scared. Wang manages a small smile. But still fighting. Admiral Zilgsen's transmission interrupts, his compound eyes reflecting the data scrolling across his screens. Captain, your position is overrun. The mathematical certainty of defeat exceeds 99.4%. Strategic doctrine requires withdrawal of remaining assets. Chen exchanges a glance with Commander Jackson. That's not how humanity operates, Admiral. Explain, Zilgsen demands, mandibles clicking in frustration. Your casualties have exceeded terminal threshold. Your ships cannot sustain continued combat operations. What logical purpose does this serve? Ken activates the fleet-wide communication system. Council observers watch in fascination as her words reach every human vessel still fighting. This is Captain Chen to all Earth vessels. I won't sugarcoat our situation. We're outnumbered, outgunned, and running on fumes. But look at what we've already accomplished. We've evacuated 80 million Garaxian civilians. We've inflicted unprecedented damage on the swarm. And most importantly, we've proven that these things can be stopped. The neural monitors attached to volunteer human crew members register an extraordinary phenomenon. As Chen speaks, their stress indicators decrease while combat readiness metrics rise. Throughout human history, We faced moments like this, where everything depended on holding the line just a little longer. The 300 Spartans at Thermopylae, the evacuation at Dunkirk, the defenders of the Alamo. With each reference, she transmits historical images that council analysts frantically study. Small forces standing against overwhelming odds, choosing defiance over surrender. We fight not just for ourselves, but for everyone counting on us, for the civilians we've evacuated, for the council world still in the swarm's path, for Earth waiting to hear whether their children are coming home. Dr. Nilser observes the neural readings with astonishment. They should be experiencing debilitating fear. Instead, I'm seeing neural cohesion, something like our battle trance, but chemically unassisted. This is who we are. Chen concludes, her voice unwavering despite the ship shuddering under another attack. This is what humans do when everything is on the line. We stand, we fight, we endure. As the Void Swarm launches its assault, the remaining human vessels execute coordinated maneuvers that Council tacticians cannot comprehend. Rather than preserving their limited resources, they attack in formations designed to maximize enemy casualties regardless of their own survival chances. From his observation post, Elder Trazim watches with mounting disbelief. They're targeting specific points within the swarm formation. How could they identify structural weaknesses our pattern recognition systems missed? They've been studying the swarm, realizes a Phelan analyst, learning its weaknesses even while losing ships. The entire battle has been a costly intelligence-gathering operation. For the first time since the war began, the Void Swarm's advance falters, then halts. The remaining human vessels, though critically damaged, continue pressing their advantage with a ferocity that council species can barely comprehend. The Garaxian religious leader, watching silently until now, finally speaks. Our oldest texts say darkness fears not those who fear it in return, but those who bring light into its domain without fear. He gestures toward the human fleet. Perhaps this is why the universe created them. We who evolved for caution and logic have always feared the void between stars. Perhaps we needed those who do not. The discovery comes at tremendous cost. A research vessel sacrifices itself to transmit sensor data, revealing the swarm's central neural hub. The council war room falls silent as the implications become clear. That found the swarm's heart, but it lies behind defenses so formidable that no conventional attack could succeed. Captain Chen studies the holographic display, her face illuminated by the swirling simulation of swarm movements. There's a way in, but it's a one-way trip. The council translator hesitates, then refuses to convey the full plan, believing she's misunderstood the human intention. Chen explains again more clearly. A small strike team in a modified ship could breach the outer defenses, reach the neural hub, and trigger a quantum cascade reaction. The catch: no possibility of escape. This mission requires volunteers willing to die for a chance at victory, Chen concludes. The council representatives shift uncomfortably. Their species evolved to prioritize survival above all. Then a notification chimes on Chen's tablet. She glances down, her expression softening momentarily. That's the last one. Every human in the fleet has volunteered. The council observers document the preparation rituals with mixed fascination and discomfort. The chosen strike team records final messages for their families. They engage in ceremonies the council finds simultaneously primitive and profound. Battle oaths spoken in ancient Earth languages, meditation practices focusing their resolve, small tokens exchanged as remembrances. Captain Chen leads the team herself, declining the council's suggestion to send subordinates. That's not how leadership works for us, she explains simply. As the mission launches, council members witness humans embracing what they call their finest hour. The observation feeds capture every moment as the strike ship takes devastating damage, yet continues its approach. The team members maintain professional focus punctuated by moments of surprising levity. Jokes about going out with a bang, and references to fictional heroes who made similar sacrifices. When their ship reaches the neural hub, Chen's final transmission comes through clearly. Remember us and remember that some things are worth fighting for, even when victory seems impossible. The quantum cascade consumes both the swarm control node and the human ship in a brilliant flash. Across council space, the void swarm entities simultaneously collapse, their neural connections severed. The council chambers remain silent long after confirmation of victory. The empty chair where Captain Chen once sat a reminder of what their xenopsychologists finally named sacrificial courage, a concept they had previously believed evolutionarily impossible. The holographic representation of the swarm neural hub rotates slowly above the conference table. Elder Trazim's appendages move through the projection, highlighting the layers of defense surrounding it. The intelligence gathered at such cost confirms our worst fears, he explains. The hub is protected by 13 concentric defensive rings. Each consists of densely packed swarm entities programmed for a single purpose: protect the central node at all costs. Commander Jackson studies the display intently. But if we could reach it, destroy it, the entire swarm would collapse. Theoretically, yes, Dr. Nilsur confirms. Our analysis of swarm communication patterns suggests a hierarchical neural network originating from this central point. Severing this connection would cause cascade failure. Admiral Zilkson's mandibles click in frustration. A theoretical victory only. No vessel could penetrate those defenses. Captain Chen, who has remained silent until now, steps forward. She traces a path through the defensive layers with her finger. What about here? This fluctuation pattern suggests a harmonic resonance in their defensive grid. The council scientists exchange glances. Correct, admits Dr. Nilsur reluctantly. But exploiting it would require a ship to maintain precise quantum signatures while sustaining damage that would destroy any known vessel within minutes. Not if we modify a ship specifically for this purpose, Chen says quietly. A single vessel, stripped down, reinforced in key areas, with a quantum cascade device calibrated to trigger once it reaches the neural hub. The council translator hesitates, then refuses to continue, convinced she's misunderstood. Elder Trazim speaks directly, his translator producing stilted but clear words. You propose sending beings to certain death. I propose giving volunteers the chance to end this war with a single stroke. Chen corrects. Lieutenant Wang studies the schematics on her tablet, already calculating modifications. The Intrepid could be retrofitted. We'd need to remove all non-essential systems, reinforce the forward hull, and... Wait, interrupts Admiral Zilkson. Your species cannot seriously contemplate this. The mathematical certainty of crew mortality is 100%. The certainty of galactic extinction without this action approaches 100%. Chen counters. Sometimes the equation is that simple. The council chamber erupts in multilingual debate. Chen steps away, activating her personal communicator. Jackson, send out the call. I need volunteers for a specialized mission. Full disclosure protocol. Understood, Jackson responds. How many do you need? A minimal crew. 5. Maybe 6. Timeline. Immediate. 3 hours later, Chen's tablet chimes with an incoming notification. She glances down, her expression softening momentarily. Commander Jackson approaches. That's the last response, Jackson says quietly. Every human in the fleet has volunteered. In the retrofitting bay, the chosen strike team prepares. Council observers document the process with scientific detachment that barely masks their fascination. Lieutenant Wang calibrates the quantum cascade device while Engineer Tanaka reinforces critical systems. Dr. Nilsur observes as crew members exchange small personal items, a worn photograph, a family medallion, a ribbon-tied lock of hair. These rituals serve what purpose? She asks Commander Jackson. Connecting with what matters most before facing the end. He explains. It's very human. Admiral Zilkson approaches Captain Chen as she records her final log entry. The Council has formally requested you appoint a subordinate to lead this mission. Your tactical expertise is too valuable to sacrifice." Shen looks up, her expression unchanged. "That's not how leadership works for us, Admiral." The modified ship, now designated Firebreak, departs with solemn ceremony. Council observation feeds capture every moment as it approaches the swarm defenses. Despite massive damage, the vessel maintains its course. Most fascinating to the Council observers is the crew's communication, professional focus interspersed with surprising moments of humor. "Think they'll name a holiday after us?" jokes Lieutenant Wong as the ship shudders under another attack. "Dibs on a 3-day weekend," Engineer Tanaka responds, rerouting power from a damaged section. As Firebreak reaches the neural hub, Captain Chen opens a final channel to all Allied forces. Her voice comes through with remarkable clarity. "Remember us and remember that some things are worth fighting for, even when victory seems impossible." The quantum cascade consumes both the swarm control node and the human ship in a brilliant flash that ripples across sensor displays. Across Council space, void swarm entities simultaneously collapse, their neural connections severed. In the silent Council chamber, xenopsychologist Dr. Nilsur completes her final report with a new term: sacrificial courage, a concept they had previously believed evolutionarily impossible. The crystalline spires of the Council capital world reflect rainbow light across assembled dignitaries from 100 systems. 3 standard cycles have passed since the Void Swarm's defeat. Today, the Central Plaza unveils a monument unlike any in Council history. A simple stone obelisk bearing the names of every human who died in the conflict, with Captain Chen's name shining in gold at the top. Commander Jackson, now leading the surviving human fleet, stands before the assembled representatives. The Council Premier approaches with a ceremonial decree. The Alliance of Earth is hereby offered permanent status as the primary defense force of the Council worlds. The document includes unprecedented concessions: Earth classified as a protected cradle world, human cultural autonomy guaranteed, and integration of human tactical doctrines into Council defense protocols. In the Hall of Knowledge, Council evolutionary theorists present a revolutionary framework for understanding intelligent development. "We previously believed emotional response systems were evolutionary dead ends," the lead theorist explains, displaying comparative brain scans. "Humanity proves that emotion, particularly what we now term constructive passion, represents a viable alternative pathway we dismissed as impossible." During the evening reception, human representatives patiently explain concepts that still translate poorly: standing up for the little guy, never backing down from bullies, and the simple yet profound idea that defending others is its own reward. A Moravian elder, one of the oldest council members, observes, "For millennia, we evolved toward pure logic, believing emotion was primitive. Perhaps we were wrong." As the ceremony concludes, reports arrive of unusual activity at the galaxy's edge, possible new threats emerging from deep space. The Council's response reveals their transformation. Alongside probability calculations and risk assessments, a new question enters their deliberations. What would the Furious Ones do? The memorial ceremony ends with the dedication of the new Galactic Defense Force headquarters, its entrance bearing Captain Chen's final words in every Council language. "Some things are worth fighting for, even when victory seems impossible." In the garden outside, Council species and humans plant trees together, symbolic gestures of a future where logic and passion might finally coexist. A young human cadet stands beside a Garaxian child, both looking up at the stars. "Are you afraid of what's out there?" the Garaxian asks. The cadet smiles, echoing words now famous throughout the galaxy. "No, but whatever's out there should be afraid of us." The Council capital world's Central Plaza shimmers with morning light as thousands gather for the memorial dedication. Species from across the galaxy stand together: crystalline Tholians beside methane-breathing Valerians, silicon-based Phelan next to the energy beings of Centauri Prime. At the center stands a monument of simple Earthstone, transported across 17 systems at the Council's insistence. Commander Jackson, his dress uniform bearing new insignia of the Joint Fleet, approaches the podium. Behind him, the surviving human crews stand at attention, their ranks tragically thinned. 3 standard cycles ago, Jackson begins, his voice carrying across the hushed crowd. Humanity answered a call that many considered hopeless. We came not because victory was certain, but because someone needed help. That's what humans do. Dr. Nilsor, now head of the newly established Institute for Human Studies, observes from nearby. Her research team records every nuance of the ceremony, still struggling to fully understand the species that sacrificed so much for strangers. The monument's covering falls away, revealing thousands of names etched into stone. Unlike the mathematical efficiency of council memorials, each name appears in personal handwriting, scanned from letters and logs. Captain Chen's signature shines in gold at the top, captured from her final mission authorization. Council Premier Zaltur approaches with ceremonial solemnity, bearing an ancient document case. The Council of Worlds has decreed unanimously, he announces, that the Alliance of Earth is hereby granted permanent status as the primary defense force of Council territory. He presents the document to Jackson. The text contains concessions unprecedented in Council history. Earth classified as a protected cradle world, human cultural development guaranteed against interference, and integration of human tactical doctrines into all defense protocols. In the Hall of Knowledge, the afternoon symposium attracts scientists from every council world. The lead evolutionary theorist, a Moravian named Sherval, presents her findings before a packed auditorium. For millennia, we believed emotional response systems represented evolutionary dead ends, she explains, displaying comparative neural scans. Our species universally evolved towards suppression of emotional reactivity as intelligence developed. The holographic display shifts to human brain scans. Humanity developed along a different path. Their emotional centers didn't atrophy. They integrated with higher cognitive functions. What we now term constructive passion represents a viable evolutionary alternative we dismissed as impossible. During the evening reception, human representatives answer endless questions from curious council members. Lieutenant Wang explains the concept of standing up for the little guy to a group of fascinated Phelan scientists. Engineer Tanaka demonstrates the human greeting of handshaking to a bemused Folian diplomat. Elder Kurvox, one of the oldest council members, observes the proceedings with ancient eyes. For 10,000 cycles, we evolved toward pure logic, believing emotion represented primitive developmental stages. He remarks to Jackson, "Perhaps we were wrong." The celebration pauses as the council's alert system activates. Holographic displays show unusual energy signatures at the galaxy's edge, possible new threats emerging from deep space. Jackson watches with interest as the council's response unfolds. Alongside their traditional probability calculations and risk assessments, a new question enters their deliberations, passed from species to species. What would the Furious Ones do? The day concludes with the dedication of the new Galactic Defense Force headquarters. The entrance archway bears Captain Chen's final words in every council language. Some things are worth fighting for, even when victory seems impossible. In the memorial garden, human and alien children plant saplings together, oak and maple alongside exotic specimens from distant worlds. A young human cadet kneels beside a Garaxian child, both looking skyward at the emerging stars. "Are you afraid of what's out there?" the Garaxian asks, its bioluminescent skin pulsing with curiosity. The cadet smiles, repeating words now famous throughout council space. "No, but whatever's out there should be afraid of us."